Hi, and welcome to Spoonful of Strength. I'm Rachel, and I live with multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, and a few other diagnoses that keep life interesting.
And I'm Tina. I am a fibromyalgia warrior with chronic back issues and a proud stage 4 cancer survivor. We're sisters, and together we're here to support, inspire, and connect. So if you're new here, the spoon theory explains how we navigate life with limited energy or spoons.
And we're thrilled to share that we've been ranked number 30 on FeedSpot's Top 100 Chronic Illness podcast list. So grab a spoon and let's dig into stories, tips, and a whole lot of strength. Welcome to a new season of Spoonful of Strength. We are so glad that you're here today. We've got a great season coming up, and we're just really excited that you have joined us today. How are you doing, Tina? How was your time off? We had about a month off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yep. It was pretty good. It's funny because we're like, oh, we have a break, but we're spending so much time planning. We're not really on a break because we're planning our next season. So, but it's always fun to do and to look forward to. So
Yeah, coming up with new ideas and trying to make the podcast better every season.
Yeah.
So we definitely had some work to do, and we're really are you excited for this season? I think it's going to be a good one.
I am. We have great guests lined up, a lot of good spoonies coming on. Some few little changes. I feel like each season we learn how to make the next season better.
How was your holiday?
Pretty low key, which is how I like it. I was still, those of you that are listeners that were tuning in during season 2, I was still dealing with a lot of my sciatic and back issues. So didn't really do a whole lot on the holidays, kind of, just the two of us for the most part. But do you have a good holiday?
Yeah, it was busy. My son was home from the Air Force for a week, and then my stepson was home for about 48 hours from Arizona. And so it was like 2 or 3 days where it was so busy, and then, everything stops. And I feel like I'm still recovering from the holidays physically. But, I do have to tell you a funny story. I think our chronic community can laugh at my mistakes, but this is a big one. I've been having a lot of cognitive issues, getting a little bit worse. And my mom decided to have our family Christmas party at her house, which is literally a 45-minute drive. It's get on the interstate, go north, get off the interstate, and we're there. It's the easiest drive. Ed couldn't come because he had to work. And so I was driving my 2 out of 3 of my sons. I get on the interstate and we're driving, and I'm talking to my sons, and I look up, and anybody who knows Indiana knows there's Interstate 69 and it runs north and south. South takes you to Indianapolis, north takes us to where we want to go for family. And I'm on the interstate for like 12 miles, and I look up and I see Fishers, which is a suburb of Indianapolis.
You were on the wrong direction.
I like gasped. I scared my son because he thought we were about to get in an accident or what. And I was like, oh my God, we just went 12 miles in the opposite direction.
Oh no.
And I hurried and I turned around. So we were like a half hour late. I was like, I cannot believe I just did that. Like, all of these things that I'm thinking of that I should have recognized was not going in the right direction. And it took me 12 miles. I was so embarrassed, and I felt so bad that I'd made that mistake, held up dinner for like 30 minutes. But, we got there safe. So I think at that point, that was the day after Christmas. I think I was just so exhausted. Do you want to tell everybody, while we were on break, we did get some good news as far as our podcast. So FeedSpot is basically a place where you can read all your favorite blogs, podcasts, news, websites, YouTube channels, like everything's all put together. And I got an email sometime late December, and I'll let you share the news
Sure.
on.
So she calls, yeah, you call me up and you're like, so they just released this list. FeedSpot released a list of the top 100 chronic illness podcasts to listen to for 2025. And Rachel calls me and she's like, I just got this email and you're not going to believe this. And we were ranked on there. She's like, where do you think we were? And I said 100. And she's like, no. And I said, well, I know we're not number one. I'm like, no way are we number one. But we actually are listed as number 30 on the top chronic illness podcast to listen to. So that was pretty exciting news.
That was. We're
Wow.
gonna we're gonna probably be mentioning that quite a bit this season because it's exciting.
It was
But
exciting, but it also helped keep us going too, because for
yeah,
both of us, right around that time, both of us were kind of dealing with a lot of burnout, not so much podcast related, but just life burnout
physical.
in general. So, and, that kind of, it's like, well, I guess we are doing a season three.
Yeah,
Time
we
to
got to
get
come
busy.
back. Yep,
Yeah, we got to come
yep,
back now. So,
yeah, yeah. We definitely. That was a surprise. I even before I even called you, I had to Google. Is FeedSpot real? Is this a real,
yeah,
place?
yeah,
And
yep.
and yeah, that was really exciting for us because yeah, we both were going through, I think you were at the heightened of your back pain and not feeling well. And I've had some setbacks since break. And so yeah, that was kind of like, okay, well, we are doing something that matters. And it's been feeding us well and feeding our
Yeah.
souls well, but now we can see that, hopefully we are inspiring or getting the word out there to spread about chronic illness and helping other people. So, um, really, really cool. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. That was super exciting. Super exciting.
we also talked about the last episode of last season about resolutions and starting the new year. And we're, a month behind here, but did you start any new practices or any resolutions or anything to start off 2025?
I made promises, not resolutions, because I feel like those New Year's resolutions, you say I'm gonna eat healthier, I'm gonna exercise more, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and then life gets in the way, especially if you're a chronic illness sufferer.
Yeah.
Um, and then those resolutions don't happen because you just simply can't make it happen. And then you start feeling worse about yourself because I can't do this. So I just tried to make
Hmm.
some promises of I'm gonna, get us back to eating healthier. I'm gonna stop overextending myself for
Hmm.
others. I'm gonna stop doing as much for other people at the expense of myself.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you do on those days that you do feel up for doing things. That's when you're like, oh, I need to do this for so and so or this for so and so, and you got to remember to conserve that energy, conserve those
Hmm.
spoons for yourself.
Yeah. I mentioned on the last episode about my word of the year. And for those of you who didn't listen to that episode, for 2024, I had just a word that was just kind of a mantra of like how I want to spend the year. And 2024, my word was kind. Just to be kind to myself, treat others kindly, not to get involved in drama and all of that. And so I've really been struggling with my word for this year because this is only the second time that, I've done this. Last year's word just kind of came to me. And so I was going about a couple. I had about two or three that I was going between. And I talked to Ed last night and I'm like, what do you think? And of course, he picks the word that I was not really, that was probably my least favorite. So I said, well, I'm going to
Uh-huh.
post it to Instagram and I'm just going to ask them what they think. And Instagram, you came through for me. You picked the word that I felt like was the most me and what I want to do this year. So I was going between the word balance and breathe. And balance meaning finding balance in my life, and especially with some of the physical things that are going on. And breathe, just to remember to take a deep breath, try not to let anxiety get to me. Take a breath before, making any decisions, and just taking the moment to relax and take a breath. And y'all came through for me. 86% said breathe. So that's my word for the year is just breathe. So,
Breathe, breathe. Yep.
yeah,
It's a good reminder. I mean, there's just so many different benefits for just
yeah,
simply learning to breathe,
yeah,
and let them go. Um,
yeah, yeah. And a physical reminder too. My breathing has gotten a lot worse, and my physical therapist will say, okay, breathe. Like take a moment because I'm
right.
all like, all right, let's do the next exercise. Let's do this. And he keeps reminding me, take a breath, recover,
Mhm.
and move on. So,
Right.
um, but overall, I think we're just excited to be back. There's a freshness, new start type of thing when we start back up a season, and I know we've got a lot of hopes for the season. So today will be a little bit of a different episode. We are still going to have our Spoonie come on here shortly. She's going to talk to us a little bit about nutrition. She's a nutrition health coach. So we're going to talk just a few minutes here about the importance of nutrition. But then we're going to bring her in, get to know her a little bit, and then we're going to kind of come back to the nutrition topic and maybe learn a little bit from her. So, what are your thoughts?
Proper nutrition makes a huge, huge difference in how you're how you're feeling. I've noticed a big difference. We started when I was going through. I wish I had done it with my initial diagnosis, but it wasn't until after I had that reoccurrence in 2020
Mm-hmm.
that we started seeing a naturopath. I mean, yeah, a naturopath, to kind of get us on the right pathway of supplements and how do I best support myself, my body through this,
Mm-hmm.
and so we really cut out working with her. We added a lot of supplements. Both of us added a lot of supplements to our diet, but we also really started paying attention to what we are eating and what we're putting in our body.
Yeah.
And eating, there's a lot to be said about clean eating. There's a lot of additives, especially in this country. In the
Mm-hmm.
United States, we have a lot of added preservatives and added things to our food that don't need to really be in there.
Yeah.
That causes a lot of body inflammation that
Mm-hmm.
you may not even realize. Just because you're not feeling pain doesn't mean that your body's not inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when we really cut out all the processed foods or significantly reduced processed foods, we'd still, we didn't deprive ourselves. If we wanted a treat here and there, we would still have it. But we felt amazing during that. And then, life gets in the way, you get busy or, various reasons. And then all that, those unhealthy habits can sneak back in. And I'll tell you, we're struggling. Both of us are struggling with that. We definitely feel a big difference in how our bodies are feeling now. We need to get back on that pathway compared to how we felt when we were truly eating,
Mm-hmm.
like whole food.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard. I mean, my son is seeing a nutritionist right now, and so, I'm kind of getting back into eating healthier for him. And it's just so, so difficult, especially with chronic illness. I have a lot of issues with my stomach, and um, there are a lot of things that I eat that probably aren't the healthiest, but they don't upset my stomach. And so
Yeah.
I I really in a day do not eat much. But like for breakfast, I will have the same thing because I know that it won't cause upset, it won't cause the stomach pain and all of that. And so that's kind of a hurdle for me.
Hmm.
And also sometimes when you don't feel well, like you just want like comfort food and you want though it's so much easier just to grab, a box of crackers or an unhealthy brownie or something that's processed, can of soup or anything like that versus making it homemade and things like that. And actually I've learned with, trying to change our habits here recently, it's also a lot more expensive
It
to
is.
eat
Eat healthy.
healthy. Yeah, it's
Yes.
which is sad. It's our grocery bill has gone up trying to buy more fruits and vegetables and things like that. It's
It's
hard.
also harder to plan, to sit down
Yeah.
and meal plan. Like we definitely did better. When I would sit down every Sunday and plan out our meals for the week.
Hmm.
And then do my grocery shopping for it. But, also with eating healthy, and trying to eat more fresh foods, like you said, with the fruits and vegetables being more expensive, but it's more time consuming because,
Yeah.
if you are bringing fresh fruits and vegetables in where maybe you used to only have to grocery shop every other week, now you have to do it, sometimes a couple trips a week for that
Yeah.
fresh produce because it's not going to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. It does require a lot of planning, like even with, you know, my son Jaron's at Ball State, and he's got class after class after class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're like, what can you pack to be able to nibble on in between classes? Because his whole day has no break. And
Right.
he was like, oh, those Uncrustables, I can just put one in my bag and I can eat it. And I'm like, I looked at the nutrition facts and I'm like, this has so much added sugar. And so it's like, okay, well, now let's do like a turkey sandwich, but that requires a lot more work. It's not just grab a granola bar. It's okay, well, let's get some carrots and dip, to take with you. And
Mhm.
it's a lot of planning, and we're really struggling with that because I don't have a lot of energy and he's busy bebopping around. But gosh, you can come up with a million excuses, but it really is something that is important when you're dealing with an autoimmune disease or chronic illness. And there's a lot of different diets depending on what your chronic illness is, right? So I know,
Right. I know that I was just saw mention of, what they call the carnivore diet, which is,
mm,
you're not eating those fruits and vegetables. You're looking at like the high fat to support your body. I know a lot of
high
people that try to
protein.
lose weight. Yeah, yeah, the high proteins. But some people can't do the high protein diets. Like me with one kidney, super high protein is not good. Like I've been told that, you don't want to go super high in protein, which is also hard because I had weight loss surgery a number of years ago and I'm supposed to focus on the protein protein.
Mm,
So trying to find
yeah.
that balance of that. We did when we started seeing our naturopath, she ordered what's called an IgG test, and it shows
Mm,
you the different foods or food categories that you're sensitive to that could be causing more inflammation in your body or some stomach upset or skin issues or allergies and things like that. And so that's very, very individualized,
yeah.
um, for that. And it was an interesting eye opener of a lot of the foods that I'm like, I eat this all the time. I didn't realize that this was causing issues. Which can also prove challenging when two people in the household do these IgG tests and you're like, oh, great. How am I, I can have tomatoes, but he shouldn't be eating them. Or, I can have oat milk, but, he can't do oat milk and he can't have dairy. So, what do we do now? And then that also increases your, it can increase extra, the stress of just trying to plan meals that work for both.
Hmm.
Um, but it also could increase your grocery bills. If
Yeah.
you're having to buy, rice milk and oat milk or, multiple different things in the house to support multiple people.
And we probably should mention that, any nutrition path or any diet, your doctor is going to be the one to kind of lead you to what is going to be the best, or get you to a nutritionist or a naturopath, to make decisions based on your body. We are giving you the things that we've been through or the things that we know of, and Roxanne's gonna give us a little bit more information, but you definitely want to consult your doctor,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
making decisions. But because gosh, you can go
As,
onto Pinterest nowadays and say, oh, well, give me a diet, and you can find a whole bunch of different information. But if that diet
yeah.
or nutrition path is going to increase your inflammation, or if you have IBS or IBD, increase pain, anything like that, then it's probably not the best scenario. Like I said, we're working with a nutritionist for my son. She's focusing on getting rid of processed food, low sugar, and not necessarily calorie counting. Yeah, and just trying to eat more healthy options. She told us that, for his plate, half of the plate should be vegetables, which I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, that seems, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that vegetables are one of the things that as a family we suffer from just not getting enough. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was a good visualization for us to kind of know, okay, well, the half the plate needs to be a salad or green beans or corn
Yeah.
or anything like that. So now you
Yep.
mentioned
Yep.
supplements and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. What sort of supplements were you told were going to be something that would help
Yeah.
you?
Well, of course, your natural, like the magnesium helps, vitamin D, a good multivitamin. For me, I had, like I take black seed oil supplements,
Mm,
which, has a lot of anti-cancer, properties, iron. The important part also with any supplements, especially if you're on prescription medication, is to consult your physician, to be sure that any type of supplements that you are taking or are looking into starting does not counteract,
yeah,
um, the prescription medication that you're on. These holistic and alternative methods insurances don't cover. So I feel like we're lucky enough that we're in the position to be able to afford for us to do these things.
hmm,
Would we prefer not to have to pay out of pocket? Sure. But, it's like for a lot of people, I feel like you're having to put a price tag on your health.
yeah,
And that's not right.
yeah, yeah. Because I'm thinking for us, I have a hard time spending money on myself anyway. But even for something like that, depending on how much it would be, I wouldn't be in a position to be able to afford that. And so
Yeah.
that's where I have to do what I can within my means to be able to do the
Right.
best that I can. And,
Yeah.
a little bit more in grocery and trying to adapt new habits and things is going to have to be the way that I have to go, because the other option is probably not feasible.
It's sad that a lot of the things that can help us are cost prohibitive for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah, it is sad. Even though it's for your health, you can't trade spending money on acupuncturist or naturopath versus paying your bills, paying your rent and your car
Exactly.
payments and it would, it's different if you're taking your vacation fund or anything like that. But when it comes to
Right.
having to take from necessities, then unfortunately you just can't.
You can't do that. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
sad.
just
Yeah.
can't do that.
Hey, Spoonful of Strength listeners. I know we've talked about nutrition on the podcast. Well, we can't forget about our furry friends.
That's right, Rachel. Our pets deserve the same love and care when it comes to what they eat. That's why we're excited to tell you about Space Dog treats sold by my business, Magical Mutts Creations.
These treats are made with all natural ingredients crafted right here in the USA and free from unnecessary additives. My dogs love the Salmon Galaxy Bites. They do a happy dance every time they hear the bag crinkle.
Supporting Magical Mutts means supporting a chronic illness-owned business that truly cares. Treat your pup to healthy, nutritious snacks they'll love.
Visit magicalmuttscreations.com today and discover the magic.
Because our furry friends also deserve healthy treats. Do you have any tips, Rachel, on like meal prepping? I feel like you struggle more with your energy on a daily basis where mine kind of wanes up and down. As far as planning meal prep and conserving your energy so that you're not overdoing doing that.
Yeah. I think as far as like meal prep and planning, I try really hard on Thursdays to make a list of everything, all the dinners I want to make for the next week. And I think about, the snacks that we need and all of that and try and do really good at planning everything out. As far as actually doing it, it's a different story because especially since Christmas, my energy has dropped quite a bit. But I noticed that my energy is a little bit better like late morning. And so if I've got like a crock pot dinner or something like that, I can take a little bit of time there when I know I'm a little bit better versus evening time. And I think it's just doing as much as you can without overdoing it. So whether it be picking meals that are more crock pot because by 5 o'clock I'm drained. And so the idea of fixing dinner is overwhelming. So doing a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I do the same. I try to do some crock pot meals or pressure cooker, meals that I know don't take a lot. I'll try to plan some meals that I know we really like. I may purposely make a bigger portion of that so that we have left, I try not to eat leftovers like like 2 or 3, the same meal 2 or 3 days in a row, but maybe I'll make a big stew and we'll have it a couple times that week. Sometimes I'll get fresh fruit. Right now we're on this grapefruit, like the grapefruit sections that you can get like already packaged, like in the juice. I used to buy like they had the little in the produce section, the little individual cups of
Yeah.
those. And then I started doing the math and I'm like, I could get like a big jar of them way less expensive, and save, $2-3 or, it ends up being a little bit, but every penny saved is penny saved. And then
Yeah.
I'll put them in individual containers. So like on Sunday, when it's usually a little more low key, I'll prepackage, I'll get those all ready for the week. And, he'll also bring vegetables. Like I'll get bags of steamable vegetables and keep them in the freezer. And that's another, adding more vegetables doesn't necessarily mean they have to be fresh vegetables.
Yeah.
You can toss, I prefer the frozen vegetables because they hold the nutritional value more than canned vegetables too. So I rarely buy canned vegetables. But just prepping for the week on the days where you say, okay, this day I don't really have anything going on. Mondays are usually pretty quiet for me. I can try to prep for that.
For myself, Ed's home during the weekend, so that's a good day to be able to prep because I can have an extra hand there to help
Yeah,
me get it done. So,
right.
and we're getting into smoothies, especially for me that I don't eat very much,
Hmm.
of taking like a nutritional drink and putting it in the blender with frozen fruit and
Yep.
then putting some spinach in there
Yep.
and mixing it up. Tastes like a milkshake. You don't taste the spinach. But then it also, instead of using like a milk or a juice, we're using the nutritional drink, which is given more vitamins. And so
Right.
that's been something I've tried to do. And frozen fruit is a lot more affordable than buying it fresh.
Frozen fruits are another thing that I keep a lot of, and because I do smoothies as well.
For anybody who hasn't done it, keeping like a food journal, especially when you're having bouts of fatigue or stomach issues, or a food journal is a really good idea to be able to say, oh, I ate this and I didn't feel well, but I ate this and I had a better day, and trying to figure out what works for your body and what doesn't.
Right, right. And that it's a process too, because
Yeah,
you don't just eat one thing a day.
yeah,
So, a lot of times it's the process of elimination of going, okay, today I ate this, this, and this, and something in that list did not make me feel great.
yeah,
So the next time you may say, okay, I'm going to try to, I think it might have been this one. So let me not eat this, but repeat the other stuff I ate
yeah,
that day to see how I feel after that. So,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Definitely a lot of trial and error and what works for your body. And then having chronic illness just throws another wrench in there as far as how
yeah,
our body will handle food.
yeah.
So
Anything is a great education. Anything is a great starting point, but we're all individuals. So to
yeah,
me, there's no cookie cutter answer
yeah.
of
I
how to
am still
navigate that.
waiting. Yeah, I am still waiting on the chocolate and cookie diet to be helpful, healthy, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, might be a while. But
Yeah, yeah, so far, yeah. Which is funny because I'm not like I like cookies every now and then, but I'm more of the Doritos and the potato chips and dip
yeah,
girl.
yeah, yeah. We
Yeah,
all have
yeah.
our
Our own, yeah,
um
our kryptonites. So how do you, because you were just talking about going to dinner at your parents' house for Christmas, and I know that you went out,
mhm.
at lunch for mom's birthday. Um, Social situation, how do you stick with your nutrition plan when
Yeah.
you're going to a party?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways of that. Trying to eat more nutritious that way, it's you have to give yourself a little bit of grace to allow for times when you say, okay, I'm going to indulge. And, we as a family, we on Saturdays we go out for lunch. Actually, we usually bring it in. Um, and so that's the day where I'm like, okay, well, lunch is not, I'm not counting that. That's kind of the meal that I'm not going to focus as much on, and then refocus, the rest of the week. Um, so don't feel bad to indulge if it's a social situation like a party or anything like that. Now, on the flip side of that, with the fact that I can't eat much after like 4 p.m., my mom's Christmas dinner was supposed to be in the evening. It was supposed to be dinner time. And had that happened, I just wouldn't have eaten anything because I also get a lot of anxiety with eating when I'm away from home
Hmm.
because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm an hour from home and I'm having really bad stomach pains and bloating. And so sometimes I go to the other extreme where I just won't eat anything versus when I'm at home for dinner, I'll have a small snack or something like that. Yeah, I tend to be a little bit anxious when it comes to eating out. So like for your mom's birthday lunch, I do okay eating lunch, but I know that there's things that are safer than others. So I got a salad and that's all I ate, just a very small salad. And I was like, I can get a snack when I get home, or but I don't want to be uncomfortable for an hour and 45-minute drive home. So
Right.
again, it's really kind of knowing your body and knowing what is safe and what is not safe. And luckily, I really don't have too many people that say, "Oh, why aren't you eating?" or anything like that.
Mhm.
Most of my family kind of knows what's going on.
Right. Right. Yeah, and for me, it's, if I'm going to a party, I'll bring something that I know
Mm,
that I would eat, because you never
mm,
know. You never know your food
yeah,
choices. Because mostly like in a party setting, usually people bring, you're going to bring something. So, I'll try to make sure it's something that I actually am going to eat, um, in that situation. But like you, I also try to tend to be like, oh no, I don't eat. For me, coffee is a big trigger. I'm a big coffee drinker, but my stomach does not handle all coffee.
yeah,
So, um, when we travel a lot for flyball, and they're like, oh, there's, the free hotel coffee. I'm like, nope, I will go to the Dunkin' Donuts down the street before I get free coffee, because I know that my stomach, I don't want coffee to set my stomach off for the entire morning.
yeah.
Think about that. Okay, so we have talked about our tricks and tips of, trying to be healthy nutritionally. We bring Roxanne in to join us. Roxanne is a certified yoga teacher and a holistic nutrition health coach. So she's going to be joining us to talk about her ideas on nutrition and, dealing with living with a chronic illness.
Okay, let's bring her in.
Welcome to our podcast, Roxanne. We really appreciate having you join us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited.
Yep.
Do you want to start by just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So when I was 27, in 2010, I was diagnosed with lupus. I was diagnosed fairly quickly, which I know is very uncommon. We know that autoimmune diseases take so many years to diagnose, and lupus is one of the most difficult to diagnose because the symptoms overlap with so many other autoimmune diseases. But my great uncle is a rheumatologist who happened to be one of the doctors who developed the test for lupus.
Mm,
So I was very fortunate. He is my hero. As we know, these conditions don't happen overnight. Of course, it takes many years. All these symptoms are brewing. Chronic inflammation is becoming systemic. And I actually didn't realize how sick I was. I was working in New York. Where I'm from. I was working hard. I was sort of living my dream job. I was doing everything in a really busy, almost over the top way. So I did not have that mind body connection that I've now developed so strongly.
mhm.
And the first symptoms that I had were in my hands. I always say my hands just stopped working, meaning I had terrible joint pain, inflammation, so severe that I couldn't make my bed anymore. And
Mm,
in hindsight, the other symptoms I noticed, I would go into the bathroom at work and I would have this butterfly rash. And I was working, my background's in nonprofit, and I was working at one of the largest organizations planning events. So I was really busy. So I was kind of always on the go. And I remember these moments of wondering, what is that? Or why is my hair shedding so much? Or why are my hands hurting? But it took a while to connect the dots. And I think what really pushed me to see a doctor, my GP at first, were my lymph nodes were all swollen. And I thought, red flag,
yeah.
something's wrong. And I was living with my now husband, boyfriend at the time, and he said to me, something's not right here. So I went to see my doctor, and really all she could tell me was that my vitamin D was incredibly deficient, which we know is also very common with autoimmune diseases. And then I hit a wall. The chronic fatigue took over and I just could not function. And that prompted me to see my uncle. And probably somebody in my family suggested it. I don't know that I came up with that on my own, but when I went to see him, he immediately told me I had lupus. And I thought, well, if my uncle is saying this and he's a rheumatologist and he is an expert, it must be the case. So he actually sent me to NYU to get testing done. And it wasn't right away that my rheumatologist at NYU told me I had lupus. I think for a little while he said, oh, it could be mixed connective tissue. But pretty quickly, everyone agreed it was lupus.
Now, is lupus diagnosed, like I know a lot of autoimmune diseases it's more like a process of elimination versus like there's no actual test type thing, just based more on the symptoms. Is that the case with lupus?
So there is a criteria that needs to be met, certain symptoms, certain positive blood work. And if you meet enough of those criteria, they'll diagnose you with lupus. But for most people, it really takes a very, very long time because not all the symptoms necessarily happen at once, just like for me. And so that's why I think it's so challenging. And also people don't know, just like I didn't know to see a rheumatologist right away. It is in that sense process of elimination. You may end up at different specialists before someone suggests you see a rheumatologist.
We had interviewed a spoonie last year that had lupus, but she had a discoid lupus. Are there different types of lupus, and what have they found with you?
Yes, there are different types of lupus. So we know, or many people have heard about Selena Gomez having a kidney transplant, which is because she has lupus nephritis, which means that her form of lupus is attacking her kidneys. I know people with discoid lupus. I have FLE with pretty much no kidney involvement. That means that the way my lupus presents is mostly joint, skin, hair. Although when I was diagnosed, I did have inflammation of my lungs, but as I've gotten healthier, that has not really been an issue. So lupus is also very confusing for most people and doctors to diagnose because there are different types of lupus and the spectrum is so wide. The symptoms vary from person to person so dramatically. For me, again, it's the joint, skin, hair. So chronic fatigue has been my lingering symptom. I figure out ways to manage pretty much all of my other symptoms. I've actually been in remission for 5 years, which doesn't mean I don't have symptoms. I do. But all of my blood work now is normal. So we test my complement levels at the rheumatologist twice a year, as opposed to seeing the rheumatologist 4 times a year or more, which is, how often I've been going to the rheumatologist. And as things have gotten better and easier, I see her less and less, which is nice.
Now you mentioned when you first started noticing the symptoms that you were nonprofit, super busy, probably a high stress job, or so I imagine like for a lot of us that start noticing those symptoms, it's easy did you find yourself explaining them away, going, oh, well, my hair is falling out because I'm just too stressed and not taking care of myself, or, I'm exhausted because I'm just not getting I'm working so hard. And So do you feel like you kind of like you saw them coming on, like looking back now, starting to notice the symptoms were there longer than before they presented themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you said, I was sort of brushing it off. This isn't anything serious, maybe a little bit in denial of what was going on, but I was not consciously aware of how sick I was. And I was incredibly stressed. I mean, we know that stress is one of the many triggers, but also very present in a lot of our lives when we're diagnosed. It's like the tipping point for many of us. It's not the only cause, of course. There's genetic factors and other factors that we all know better about now, such as our gut health. But stress is a biggie for sure.
And you have two young children, right?
Yeah.
So how did you deal with the pregnancy as well as having young kids and dealing with all of that while also having a chronic illness?
Sure. I've been opening up more about this lately because I do think it's important to have this discussion. So thank you for asking. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because there are many medications that you cannot stay on when you're trying to get pregnant. And so I worked with my doctors to come off a few medications, and I actually had no trouble getting pregnant. And then I felt great pregnant. And this happens because our immune systems are protecting the fetus, protecting the baby. And for 9 months, I felt the best I've felt in years. And then there is the postpartum flare that happened 6 months after, and that was incredibly difficult. I felt awful. I remember being so upset that I had to go back on some of the medications, but I knew in order to take care of myself and to be able to take care of my daughter, I had to accept it. It's just what I had to do. And I knew I wanted to have two children, and I actually had a miscarriage after getting pregnant the second time, which was difficult and painful. But my husband and I had a plan, and we kind of felt like, let's see what we have to do to have two kids, and we were committed. And I had I've had his support all these years. Before we were even married is when I got sick. So, I think after grieving the loss of my second pregnancy and coming together with my husband and deciding, all right, let's try again. I got pregnant with my son, and again, felt great all 9 months. And then the postpartum flare happened. And, I think it's like when you're in a general flare, if you've had lupus long enough, you kind of know how to work with your doctors. I also am very holistic about my health. So over time, the flare started to dissipate. And now I have two great kids who keep me on my toes.
Oh, I'm so sorry about your miscarriage. It's what you're talking about with the pregnancy. I hear that a lot with I have MS. I hear it with MS as well, where you get pregnant and you feel great and everything goes wonderful. And then once you have the baby, that flare comes, and usually it can be pretty hard. But I'm glad that your plan worked and you've got some cute babies to show for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Rachel from Spoonful of Strength. My Etsy shop is a chronic illness-owned business where I design t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, magnets, and more, all with a focus on chronic illness empowerment. Whether you're looking for something cozy, funny, or inspiring, I've got you covered. I also take custom orders because your story deserves to shine. Visit spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com, that's spoonful with 2 L's, and enjoy 25% off your order with the code podcast at checkout. Let's wear our strength with pride, one design at a time.
So you mentioned the holistic side of it. What what modalities, holistic modalities, have you found that is the most beneficial for managing your lupus?
Sure. So my plan was never to become a yoga teacher. I say it happened accidentally. To go back to when I was working in New York, high stress job, I got sick and I had to quit working, which for me has actually been the hardest part of having lupus, not being able to work the way I always planned to work. So that was really difficult, but I was fortunate to have a family member be able to hire me to work part-time. So even though I was still incredibly sick, I somehow managed to get to the office, put in a little time, feel useful, have a break from thinking about lupus and being sick, and then go home, rest. And I was kind of in that cycle for a couple of years. But I do think having something else to do was really beneficial to my mental health. And then my husband and I decided it was time to leave New York, where I'm from, and move down to the DC area where he's from. And again, I knew I needed to have some sort of job. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had this background in nonprofit. And my brother-in-law, and I've always been healthy my entire life. I was always into yoga. I was always athletic. I was working out. So to have that part of my life taken from me was also challenging, to say the least, not being able to do what I was used to. And he told me about this nonprofit wellness center down the street from where we were living. And I thought, oh, I didn't even know this place was a nonprofit. Maybe they could use my help. It's spreading awareness. So I set up a meeting with the founder, and I like to say it was love at first sight. She needed someone to help fundraise, and I needed a job. And so she hired me, and I worked there for 8 years until the pandemic when we closed our doors. But during my time there, early on, she suggested that I take our yoga teacher training. And this person is a neuroscientist. Not only was she my boss, she became my mentor, my teacher. She taught me all of the science behind yoga and meditation. And I took a leap of faith. I trusted her. I did our yoga teacher training. And that's how I became a yoga teacher. So I would say, to answer your question, long story short, yoga and meditation have been an incredible source of healing for me, because I've learned how to calm my nervous system. I've learned the science behind why these practices help to reduce inflammation. So when we calm our nervous system, our cortisol, our stress hormones lower, inflammation goes down, and that's when our symptoms can begin to resolve. So for me, that's been the game changer.
Yeah. I want to go back real quick, because we definitely want to spend some time on your business and what you're doing. But you said something that I wanted to ask a question about, and I'm going to reference a post that you had on Instagram, because one of the hardest things for me when I found out I had MS was leaving the job and leaving the workforce. And there was a lot of mental issues I had with that, a lot of grief. And you actually just had a post that I found that talked about, how you experience grief in chronic illness, whether that be from leaving a job or feeling like you're not in the same body that you were a year ago, or whatever that might be. Can you explain a little bit about how you were able to experience the grief and kind of work through that?
Sure. So like we're discussing, a big part of my identity, a big part of my life plan was to continue working in nonprofit. And when you are diagnosed with an illness and you are simply not capable of fulfilling that role, and you're not able to do what you saw yourself doing, there's a feeling of loss. So oftentimes people think of grief when you're discussing a death, and not necessarily when you're speaking of a chronic illness where you have loss over what you expected your life to be like. And I didn't realize for years that certain triggers were a result of feelings of grief. And it was only after working with a therapist the last 15 months who specializes in chronic illness, we were discussing these episodes I would have where I'd feel massive dread. I would just totally melt, like have a meltdown and feel this pain, like true pain is the best way I can describe it, sorrow. And she explained to me, she understood this was coming from the grief, the loss of what I planned to do with my life. And then I started to connect the dots because I would recognize the situations I was in when the grief was being triggered. It could be friends talking about work, friends going on girls' trips that I couldn't take, all these different experiences in life. It wasn't just about work, although that is my main pain point. Things that I simply can't do, that I would experience this feeling of grief. And so working with her as a professional, reading a book on grief, understanding grief, over time now being able to notice, oh, I'm feeling this way because I'm experiencing grief. The episodes are fewer, the pain is lessened, I recover quickly. And that's something else I talk about a lot in my posts. We're going to have these really tough times and tough feelings, and grief to me is such a painful one. And if we have tools that we can reach for, along with professional help, which I think is really important. And if you can find someone who specializes in chronic illness, that also can be a game changer because they get it. We always talk about, just getting it. There are ways that we can work through the pain, and nervous system regulation is also incredibly beneficial because we can look at situations from a calm place, a more rational place, a more accepting place.
Out of all of this and all the changes you've made, you have started your own business called RL Wellness. So tell us a little bit about your business, how that came about, and the things that you offer.
Sure, I'd love to. So like I said, I was teaching yoga at this nonprofit, this wellness center, and then the pandemic happened and it threw a wrench in my plans. I'm also a certified holistic nutrition health coach. So my plan was to be doing all these things through my place of employment. So when I couldn't do that, I had to regroup and figure out how to offer my services. And honestly, for a few years, I was targeting moms. So I was teaching my son's preschool class yoga. The teachers, the moms would come to my house, and I thought, this is great. It's post-pandemic. Moms are feeling stressed. We're all feeling, this intense energy. And it also gave me a reprieve from thinking about lupus and my health. But I started to realize I was doing our community a disservice because I felt so passionate about these tools. And I would have students come to my house who I was teaching in person with lupus and POTS and MS and Hashimoto's, different chronic conditions. And they were having great experiences in my class. And I would keep up with them during the week. I was teaching them tools that they used off of their mat in their everyday life, and they were feeling better. And so I thought, okay, maybe I need to focus on the chronic illness community. And I knew when my son started kindergarten, my day would open up. So come September of 2024, I'm on social media. I start to share more about myself. And I met a woman with lupus who was sharing about her journey and helping others holistically in a really joyful way. And I thought I need to meet her because I was also apprehensive after noticing there was a lot of turmoil around yoga and holistic practices and mindfulness in the chronic illness space. So I was always on the periphery. I was a little bit nervous about sharing my viewpoint. I was seeing things like, posts, people suggesting that they're not interested in yoga. Stop telling me yoga is a cure. And I thought, well, I know the science behind these practices. They're not woo-woo. And most importantly, we know they're not a cure. There are no cures yet.
Yeah.
But if you learn these practices, and I teach the science behind the practices, I teach in my classes all the systems that are benefiting from these practices. Maybe that will open up people's minds to why they should give it a chance. And so people were starting to ask me questions and engage with me. And I started to share in a very vulnerable but joyful way. And I realized, wow, I speak the language of lupus and chronic illness. What I teach is different. What I teach can be done virtually. I've been teaching for years since the pandemic. And maybe now's the time to go for it. So that's what happened. I launched my website. I've had exciting opportunities like this to discuss my offerings, private and group classes, nutrition coaching, community events. I'm going to do this in a way where if you sign up for a class and you can't make it, you're not going to be charged. I've lost so much money signing up for a class that I can't get to if I wake up on a day where I don't feel well. I don't even sign up for things sometimes, depending on what's going on. So, I get it. I know it's hard to actively participate in these type of classes. And so I also know the financial burden of having a chronic illness. So I decided in my business plan that if someone cannot afford a class, no questions asked, send me an email. Classes are free or reduced price. I want people to be able to take classes and do it consistently because that's when you experience the change. So I've been thinking of all the little details, making it work for us. So the classes haven't kicked off just yet. I launched my website. I want to educate people about the type of classes that I teach. It's given people an opportunity to get to know my style, learn a little bit from me, have conversations with me over the phone or Zoom. And also, I've been really honored to be a guest on a couple of podcasts. I have one more coming up just to spread the word. And then as soon as the timing is right, which is going to be sooner than later, I'm going to kick things off with a community class. I'm hoping to do a donation-based class to support what's going on in LA and organizations out there that support lupus warriors.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You mentioned that you're also a holistic nutrition health coach, and Tina and I were talking a little bit earlier about nutrition and some best practices and things. So, can you tell us a little bit about some of the tips that you have for nutrition, specifically when you're also dealing with a chronic illness?
Absolutely. I love discussing nutrition and diet, and I take a mindfulness-based approach to all things chronic illness, health, wellness, and as it relates to diet and nutrition. In 2013, I saw a functional medicine doctor. That was another game changer because in functional medicine, they look at the root cause of chronic illnesses. They're not trying to mask the symptoms. They're trying to get to the root cause. And with this doctor, I learned about an elimination diet. And so this is now something that I worked out myself first. I was my first client, and now I work with others to uncover any foods that are triggering inflammation. And for a lot of us with autoimmune and inflammatory diseases, we have an overactive system. We have something called leaky gut many times, whether it's from the disease, from the medications, from stress. And if you have all of those things going on, you're more likely to react to certain foods. And the most common food offenders are gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and eggs. So one thing that I always like to recommend to people is to look at your diet. And the interesting thing about these foods, and if you're sensitive to them, so we're talking about food sensitivities, which is very different from food allergies. If you're sensitive to these foods and they're creating inflammation in your body, we know that is causing your symptoms. The symptoms may not be directly related to your digestive system. So you can have symptoms such as migraines, joint pain, fatigue that are related to these foods that you have sensitivities to. Oftentimes people think you have to have digestive related symptoms, bloating, IBS, constipation, things like that. And seemingly, unrelated symptoms can be a result of these food sensitivities. So what we do is, and there are two ways to do it. You can take out all of these foods that you're most likely to react to at once for 3 weeks and slowly incorporate them back into your diet over 3 days. See if your symptoms present and noticing mindfully over the course of those 3 weeks how you feel. Mm-hmm. Or take one food out at a time. And when you reintroduce the food, notice how your symptoms are, but using mindfulness as the backbone, sort of what you're relying on in order to get present enough and quiet enough in your mind to know exactly what's going on in your body. And that's actually the crux of what I teach, these mindfulness practices, so we can be really clear on what's going on. Other recommendations I have when it comes to diet, things that we don't necessarily stop and take the time to do, but that have a massive impact on our health, specifically with a chronic illness. First and foremost, I would say, take a moment before you eat. So we talked about elimination diet, where we're looking at what you eat, which also, I just want to point out, is so specific to each person. Mm-hmm. We have to take that approach with our food. It's great to try different diets, but please don't get discouraged. If you are eating like someone you're seeing, post their diet online and it's not working for you, because we're all different. So we have to take a personalized approach to diet. And then when it comes to actually eating, taking a few deep breaths before you eat is going to benefit your digestion. If we're eating in a state of stress, and a lot of us live in that state of fight or flight, right? So again, back to being mindful and calming our nervous system. If we eat in a way where our cortisol levels are lowered, we're literally moving out of fight or flight into rest and digest. So that is when your body is able to best digest your food and you're able to absorb all the nutrients. And I think for many of us, it's safe to say we have a lot of digestive issues. So always thinking about your digestive system and your gut health can be really helpful. Another one is chew your food. We rush through meals, but here's the thing about our digestive system. It takes so much energy. I didn't even know this until I learned it. It takes so much energy to digest food. So if you're dealing with chronic fatigue, we want to do everything we can to increase our energy. And when our bodies are working so hard to digest food that we're not chewing, because our stomach doesn't have teeth and digestion starts in the mouth, there are enzymes in our saliva. You want to take time to chew each bite until it's liquefied.
Mm.
You may notice you have more energy after a meal, that you take a few breaths before you eat, chew your food, take your time. It can benefit your digestive system and your energy.
Yeah. Never thought about that, but I would assume it would be also less work on your gut if the food is already liquefied as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And are there any foods that you would recommend for somebody just with a chronic illness in general that support, whether it be autoimmune or just anything in general that you would recommend?
Yes. Think about anti-inflammatory foods. Curcumin, you can cook with spices and curry, turmeric that are anti-inflammatory. If you're making a vegetable or meat dish, you can sprinkle some on your food. Ginger is great for digestion, so think about adding ginger. Berries are antioxidant. So, making a list of anti-inflammatory foods, which I'm always happy to help with. And meal planning can be also very beneficial because it's easy to forget about these foods that are added support that have true anti-inflammatory benefits. I find a lot of times people are more willing to take a supplement than think about the foods on their plate. But I don't think it takes a lot of work once you become familiar with the foods or herbs or spices that you can add into the meals you're already cooking.
Share with our listeners where we can follow you and find your information.
Sure. On Instagram, you can find me at RL Wellness DC. And my beautiful new website, which just launched, is roxannelearner.com. Classes are coming soon. If you join my email list, you'll be the first to know when we kick things off. I'm very excited and I'm very
Ah,
grateful to have the
ah.
opportunity to speak to you and share my story and my journey.
Yes, we thank you. You're the first one of season 3. So I think we started out on a
Yeah.
great note. And I love that you were able to bring some tips and tricks as we have been talking about nutrition. And I just wish the best for you starting this new venture. I can see that it can help a lot of people, and especially coming from somebody with a chronic illness, kind of has that understanding of how our bodies work and all of that. So we'll definitely get the information out to everybody and give it a look. And your Instagram page is wonderful as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. What a fantastic spoonie for our first season 3 episode.
Yeah, yeah. I always go into the season worrying about if it's going to be as good as last season, and to have her come on as a guest for our premiere spot for season 3 was just, she's just excellent and knows her stuff and was a great storyteller. And I really, really enjoyed having her on.
Yeah, yes. And I'm really looking forward to when she debuts her online yoga classes. I can't wait
Mhm.
to sign up and take those.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for what she's got coming.
Yep, yep. So thank you all for tuning in this week on our first episode of season 3. We're so happy to be back. Next Tuesday, Rachel and I will be talking about Hollywood and their portrayal of chronic illness. And we also will welcome Maggie, our spoonie, next week, and she'll be talking about her journey with childhood brain cancer, seizure disorders, and her wonderful book that she has out about her journey. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Spoonful of Strength. We hope that you found a little inspiration and maybe even a new perspective to carry with you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that like button, follow us for more, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And if you're feeling generous, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your support helps us reach more Spoonies just like you.
Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and keep finding strength in your story. Bye for now.
And see you next time on Spoonful of Strength.